Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
If I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Whoa! How did my camera screw up again? Hold on. Every once in a while, it does this. That's not good. There we go. Wow. I'm going to need to just make sure that one's positioned right, so if it comes on in the wrong camera angle, because this is my other camera here. Hi, it's a side view, but this is the one that I want. How are you all doing? I hope you are doing well. Been playing around actually here in the studio for a while, and check it out. Check it out. I as you notice, I mean, Bunchy's still there and still freaking out. I think I figured out how to fix Bunchy. There's this new option in my program to make an animated movie instead of a GIF, and I can slow him down. It will be a consistent rate. We'll see. I haven't had time to do that, but check out what I made. Look how it just flew down from the top. So listen, if you like this kind of content, I truly, truly would appreciate your support on Patreon, and I certainly do need it. Let me give you a warning. I'm gonna give you a public service announcement right now. Okay, you all know I was out of work for a long time. I've been gainfully employed now, still doing when you're out of work for over a year, there's a lot of catching up to do. So, you know, there's plenty of credit cards I got behind on. Don't ever get a credit card through your bank, because there's fine print in the credit card agreement that they could just steal money out of your regular banking account anytime they want without even like giving you advance warning or obvious advance warning that they're going to do it. So here's my happy self, and all of a sudden, a large chunk of money is missing from my bank account, and they're like, well, your credit card agreement said we're allowed to do that. That's Wells Fargo, folks, by the way. So today, Wells Fargo is no longer my bank. You don't do that. What if I was out of town and couldn't get back home? Like, I know they're probably going to say somewhere in some letter, like 4 months ago, we warned you. You don't do that. You don't just withdraw money from a totally separate account. There's a reason why you pay such high interest rates on credit card. It's because it's an unsecured loan. And I know I'm behind on credit cards. And like a good libertarian, I have every intent on paying them back with the interest I owe them once I can. Like, we don't have indentured servitude anymore. I can't pay them back that way. But they took a huge chunk. Like, I'm at the point where they took my mortgage money. Let's just put it that way. How I'm going to pay my mortgage, Wells Fargo just screwed me. So they're no longer my bank account. And they say it was in the fine print. I don't know about you. Do you read all that fine print? You know, perhaps I should have. But I thought we all understood what an unsecured loan is, you know, with a credit card. But now you guys know. Don't get a credit card from your bank. Because allegedly that's in all of their agreements. And if you should ever fall upon hard times and you get paid one day, you know, from a direct deposit, they could just take a certain percentage. Just boops, out of there. So I have a new bank now. So that was a long-winded way of saying, support me on Patreon. Damn you, Wells Fargo. But at least I found a way to make a grift out of that. I just cannot even tell you how discouraging that is. Right when you're getting back on your feet, that was really a blow. I would be lying if I didn't say I didn't cry about that today. That was a blow. I'm over it now, you know, whatever. So they got some of their money back. They're going to get it from me eventually. Just this wasn't the right time when I need to pay my mortgage, but okay. So that one's done. And I did it with my fancy little button. Now check out this. So whoop, and look at this. All of my social media. So please, if you can, now Facebook, I'm usually right close to my 5,000 friends limit, but I do have some spots. So friend me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and I also am on MeWe when I remember that it exists, which, you know, maybe is about once a week. And speaking of paying the bills, the last thing I have, let me get out of the way, Asteros. You all know they're a sponsor of mine. Thank you, Zach, for sponsoring this show. If you go to asteros.com/free, you could get a free surface penetration audit. And basically what that does, they're a cyber security services company, and they will let you know where you may be lacking in some of the cybersecurity you may think you have at your electronic your website, your electronic organization, whatever it might be. So please do give them your patronage, as they are a very, very loyal sponsor of this show. So that's the fancy stuff I was doing. What do you think? So this show is going to be a bit different. I'm trying to, at least every once in a while, do some, and why? Oh yeah, some of the chats are showing up. I was going, why aren't the chats showing up? They're showing up. They're showing up now. When I was messing around with the cameras, that's what kind of messed it up for a while. So I want to do some more general political commentary, and boy, I shouldn't have to give this disclaimer, but with the state of the Libertarian Party today, you know, it used to be in the party, and we probably were rightfully paranoid for this, but we used to see spooks behind every bush, like every person you like kind of looked at a little stink eye, like, are they a Fed? I think they're a Fed. Are they a Fed? And now we do that a little bit now, and we joke about it with some people. But today there's a Republican under every bush, which is like, it's pretty ridiculous. But So I do have to give this disclaimer. Just because I am criticizing MoveOn.org today does not mean that I'm a secret Republican. Of course, everyone who saw all the critiques I've done of Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro should know that. But we all know. We all know there's some very special people in our party. Every party has some very special people, and we have our special people. They're just so special. So you got to say things like that. But oh my goodness, I subscribe to a lot of mailing lists. And MoveOn.org, if you don't know what they are, they're a really far left. I think they're probably... I'm not sure how they're categorized, super PAC or whatever. They raise money for leftist causes. Let's forget all the legal terminology. And they are so chicken little. I mean, they put the bark in barking moonbat. I mean, they put the bark, the moon, and the bat in marking moonbat. Their emails are so unhinged that it's Poe's law. You would almost think that somebody making fun of leftists wrote these emails. They are so cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Insane. Absolutely insane. For instance, back when Roe versus Wade was overturned, I say back when, that isn't even so long ago, the email I got within a few days, it might have even been the next day, it promised me that I needed to send them money because the Republicans were planning on outlawing interracial marriage. I crap you not. There's a lot of things we can criticize the Republicans for. I do not think we are in danger of them going on a jihad against interracial marriage. Okay? And if you happen to think that's a reasonable thing to say, touch grass, get help, and this probably isn't the channel for you, you barking moonbat. So, I got to, one day apart, absolutely unhinged. I mean, so far off their hinges, the doors aren't even in the cabinet anymore. Like, they're running down the street. That's how unhinged these emails are. So let's see. We have one from November 16th and one from November 17th. So this was right after Trump's announcement that he is running again for president. Now, we all knew that was going to happen. I have various thoughts and opinions just as an outside political commentator, forgetting about my particular political beliefs. I think it was very poor strategy for him to do it when he did. If I were advising the Republicans, which good thing I'm not, I'd be like, disband and cry. But if I were, just as say I was an impartial political advisor, terrible time to announce. And we've learned that today, right? Now they're starting another investigation into Trump. Like, people are so tired of that. You should have waited till at least after the first of the year where they couldn't do that anymore. But okay, go on with your bad self. Listen, y'all are going to do what y'all are going to do. I don't care if you shoot yourself in the foot. The entertainment value is priceless. But anyway, I watched the speech. For Trump, I don't think he's a great public speaker. Okay, I don't think. Actually, I've been watching speeches, these political speeches, for a while, much more now than I ever did, and there's very few good political speakers. Most of them are just completely scripted nothing burgers, like that Kamala Harris parody, which is exactly like her. It's so bad. So I'll give Trump that. He doesn't sound like the typical politician, but it's also just not good, at least to me. But I can see how it appeals to the common man, because it is how the common man talks. But it was very, I don't want to say low energy, because that's become such a trite like insult, and I don't mean it as an insult. It wasn't his typical, you know what I mean, his typical Trump energy. It was very low key. And I think it had some sour notes, but I also think he hit some good notes. You know, I should have wrote notes while I was watching it to say, but this show isn't about his speech. It's about the unhinged reactions to it, okay? But I would love to hear your guys' opinion about his speech. Yeah. And it was funny when people were, well, who was it? I don't even remember. Was something on chat where people were like, he hasn't even announced yet? It was like midway through the speech. I'm like, yes, he did. He announced when he was introduced as the next president and next first lady. You know? So anyway, and we all knew, okay? Like, it was no surprise. He should have waited, at least in my opinion, till after the Georgia runoffs. But even more, in my opinion, until late January, end of January. My opinion, like, that's why I make the big bucks, right? That's what my opinion's worth. But now on to these unhinged emails. Really, you guys ought to sign up for these, and also sign up for the Trump fundraising emails, because we'll do some of those, because those are freaking hilarious too. But no matter how crazy Trump can be, and all of you guys who have Trump derangement syndrome, just hold your ears for a second. I do not believe Trump was the worst president ever, but let me do a disclaimer. I hate all presidents, so I don't like any of them. Okay, so put that aside. It's like that whole election denier label. I deny all elections because I don't think elections are valid to begin with, that nobody has the right to select a ruler for another person. But put all that aside. As presidents go, he wasn't he wasn't like the worst. He wasn't the best, but he wasn't as bad as Biden. I don't give a crap who gets mad at me for that. And he did some libertarian things, and he did some terrible things. A mixed bag. I say the same thing about Clinton, by the way. I kind of rate the two kind of similar. I mean, on different ends of the spectrum, but I kind of rate Trump about the same way I rate Clinton. Just Trump was way funnier. Just way funnier. And that's putting aside the whole, you know, cigar smoking under the desk and grab them by the whatever. They each had their problems with, yeah, their relationships with women, I guess we can put it. But all you want, looking objectively, okay? And looking objectively, we'd be in a much better place right now if Trump had won the last election. I don't care how mad you get at me for that. I do not care. We have a dementia patient for a president right now. And that's not saying he would be great. But Biden is as bad as Jimmy Carter. Okay, nobody wanted to admit how bad Jimmy Carter was in the middle of it. But he will go down in history as being at least as bad as Jimmy Carter, who was a super nice guy, and at least he didn't sniff little girls' hair. Okay, but get me back on track to these move on emails. So subscribe to the Trump fundraising emails, because they're a hoot too, but they're nowhere near as insane as this. And we're going to start doing some reviews, because like I said in the title of this, that moveon.org is what you get, you know, when you order CNN on Wish. Newsmax is what you get when you order Fox News on Wish. Oh my God. Newsmax is like the flip side of moveon.org. They're deranged. There's one guy on there whose name I can never remember who's okay. And I bet one day he'll end up on Fox. But like Greg Kelly, I swear he gets a chubby every time he says Trump's name. His table rises every time he says Trump's name. But who's that guy that comes on right after Greg Kelly? Newsmax, though, Doc Sexy. You gotta admit, Newsmax is worse. Newsmax is just the flat earthers of the conservative movement. Oh my God. But they're free. I don't pay for cable right now. Don't judge me. That's all I can get. But now on to the MoveOn.org, now that I've went on and on. So first, the November 16th, the unhinged email about Trump. Here's the headline. Donald Trump should not get free airtime on CNN and other news networks. Sign this petition immediately. So, you got a guy who's running for president. He's obviously newsworthy. That doesn't mean you need to like him. There's plenty of people I don't like. But if they're newsworthy, then yes, they should be on the news. But they are freaking out because the news is covering somebody who's running for president. I guess maybe that's how they justify never covering the libertarians or not covering them properly. But okay, sign a petition that Trump should never be on CNN. They do go on to nuance it a little bit, but this is the headline I'm reading to you. This is what they lead off with. So yeah, go sign a petition to tell CNN that they shouldn't have Trump on. CNN loves Trump. They might not love him like to be president, but he's a moneymaker for them. They are probably so glad he redeclared, because when they didn't have him to talk about all the time, their ratings went even worse, if that was possible. But anyway, so in 2016, major news networks gave Donald Trump $2 billion in free advertising because he was running for president. It isn't free advertising. He put himself in the news because he was doing newsworthy events. They are complaining that news networks covered one of the people, covered the Republican nominee. They are literally upset about that. They haven't learned. So MoveOn is literally arguing that you censor important political news that you don't like Hunter's laptop, for instance. Okay, they haven't learned and are about to do it again because he's running for president. As Donald Trump announced he was running for president again, we saw that the news media learned nothing from the last go-round about how to avoid his toxic manipulations. You mean his campaign points? I understand you think his campaign points are toxic. I get it. And his manipulations. So you don't think people can ever judge for themselves. So you MoveOn, think that you should get to decide what we get to watch, and we should sign a petition so that we decide what everyone else gets to watch. Because Donald Trump, who I just said isn't the greatest public speaker, he is transfixing us. You want toxic manipulations? What about giving a half the country is evil, treasonous, insurrectionists behind a blood-red background flanked by the military? Is that not toxic manipulation? MoveOn.org. Just like Fox, CNN covered his speech live. because it was newsworthy. And from what I understand, they didn't cover his entire speech live. And Trump's people were complaining, saying they were entitled to have the entire speech covered live. Both sides are wrong here. But anyway, essentially giving him free reign. Let me put that into English for you. They didn't censor this. To dominate airwaves and reach viewers with his narcissistic brand of conspiracy theories and abuse. Now, I did zone out a bit in his speech, to be honest with you. I don't like political speeches to begin with. And why do I keep feeling like I've got something in my teeth? You know how paranoid I am about that. You would tell me, wouldn't you? Hold on. I gotta look. I do! See, you guys didn't tell me. My paranoia. I thought I felt something. Hopefully it's not in the video. I apologize. If it is. My God, you guys are supposed to tell me. Now I'm going to have nightmares about that. You know how paranoid I always am about having something in my teeth. Anyway. I got to get over that. Where was I at in this thing? Oh, okay. I did zone out. A little bit during his speech. But for his speeches, I didn't really... Maybe I'm just used to what he says, but I didn't hear conspiracy theories and abuse. I heard him say typical political talking points. The one thing I remember him saying that I thought was extremely over the top, of course, had to do with the southern border, where he said something like, and lots of these people are coming here for nefarious purposes, and then went on to talk about fentanyl and stuff like that. And that was over the top. But that's a typical right-wing talking point. It really is. But for him, I thought it was a pretty tame speech. But again, maybe I zoned out. Maybe we'll watch it one day. We'll see. And he doesn't have to pay a dime. So are you saying that candidates you don't like should have to pay to have their newsworthy events covered? My God. I'm keeping my mirror out because I am so paranoid now. Nope, it's gone. You guys betrayed me. You didn't tell me. Okay. CNN, stop giving Donald Trump a seditionist. You know how I feel about those types of vocabulary used. And I'll say this right now. I've said this to other libertarians before. If you think what happened on January 6th was sedition or insurrection, you have no idea what those words mean. You disrespect the revolutionary warriors that founded this country. You've got cabinets in the GABA, which is nuts and bolts in the head. And, yeah, you're probably not going to enjoy my content. QAnon conspiracy theorist. Now, QAnon always makes my eyes glaze over, but I've never really heard Trump do QAnon stuff. But you want to know something in this country? You're allowed to believe crazy things. Biden believes that the vaccine is safe and effective. And I think that's pretty crazy. But he's allowed to believe that. And I said I'm not in general an anti-vaxxer. I'm about to get my flu shot. Don't come for me. I'm about to get my shingles vaccine because I've been having outbreaks of shingles. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. This thing is just a big pharma money grab. By the way, that means this video is completely demonetized by now, by the way. So please, super chats matter. Super chats really do matter, though. Okay, so where were we at? And spreader of disinformation. this kind of really Orwellian talk today, election denier, misinformation, this kind of stuff. Free airtime on cable news. Well, actually, let's pretend that he actually is a seditionist and somebody who goes around spreading disinformation. That's actually newsworthy. Like, you're almost, particularly a seditionist, that's something that needs to be covered on the news. Don't you want, because when you start talking about a seditionist and a traitor, those are capital crimes, right? You're just throwing around words. Basically, in this sentence, move on, you are arguing that Donald Trump deserves to be executed. You're evil. You throw around terms like that, you're evil. Because those terms mean something very specific. And in our country, they're capital offenses. Now, do I think they should be? No. I don't believe, well, there's lots of things I don't believe in, but I certainly don't believe in capital punishment. I also think we're a country founded by quote-unquote traitors. News networks don't need to show his speeches live. They're news. You little censorious bastards. They can cover them as news. Thank you, Forrest Mommy. Super chat. Thank you so much. And I'm going to stick that up on the screen. And I do appreciate your thanks. Thank you very much. So check this out. It says they can cover him as news. Wait until he's done. Show clips within context. What are clips within context? Isn't the best context the entire speech? Hold on. Where is it?
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense. Don't show the entire thing. Show only clips of the entire thing, but in context. But isn't the best context the entire thing? After offer fact checking, yeah, we know how well that works. And actually, that's called anchor commentary, which news networks like CNN did do. And stop amplifying his abusive attacks and bigoted insults. Very few more dangerous insults than calling someone a traitor, a seditionist, or an insurrectionist who tried to overthrow the results of the 2020 presidential election. Now, believe me, I'm not going to, this second email we're going to go through a lot faster because it's just a lot of the same screed, but I want to go over these things in detail. The First Amendment protects our right to address, have redress of our grievances with the government. And one of those things we're allowed to do is to dispute the results of elections. Elections are not like Moses coming down on high with the 10 Commandments and thou shalt not question the Lord your God. One of your rights as an American is to say that you don't think an election was ran fairly. The disallowing of that opinion is the road to tyranny. Now, I've said multiple times before, I don't think I think there's fraud in every election. First, let me get that off right off the bat. But I do not think there was enough fraud in the 2020 election to change the results. I do think Biden won. I've said that from the beginning. People get mad at me. As you can see, I've gotten people from all sides now mad in this conversation. I looked at the alleged evidence for myself. I'm not convinced, but I will defend vehemently the right for people to disagree and remain firmly convinced. That is their right under the First Amendment to do that. And they have the right to do that without being called an insurrectionist or a seditionist or an election denier. This is the most precious of rights, because without the right to speech, that's when violence does happen. But anyway, he wanted to overthrow the results. No, he wanted to challenge it. Okay, if you, by overthrow, you mean legally challenge and win, yes, he did want to do that, and he has every right to do that. As do each of you at any election, at any level. That is your right. Do not let people shame you into not having that right. And inspired a deadly riot at the Capitol. Now, here's where things get a bit strange. Why don't we call it a mostly peaceful protest? It was, wasn't it? It was mostly people who were let in. You've seen the videos of the Capitol Police waving people in. Why aren't they being held culpable? How come they're not being said to have helped inspire what went on? That's a riot. But what went on with all the BLM crap, those were mostly peaceful protests.
Make it make sense.
And the only death that happened was the shooting of an unarmed woman by the Capitol Police. Now, where I'm going to now irritate the other side. I don't believe it was a riot. But if there's such a thing as inciting a protest, yes, I do think Trump incited a protest because he believed it. And his belief propelled other people into that belief. Inspired is the right word, perhaps not incited. But you're allowed to inspire people to things like that. There were sincere people in the BLM protests who believed that black people were getting targeted by police. You're allowed to protest these things. You're not allowed to burn down neighborhoods. It said, in a desperate attempt to keep himself in power, has filed to run again for president in 2024. This is the kind of honest context every news outlet should provide. You think nobody knows these allegations? These January 6 hearings have been going on forever. Where are the hearings about the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story? Trump sought to overturn an election. Yes, he did, and he has every right to do that. And helped incite a deadly insurrection. If you think that was an insurrection, you don't know what the word means. We know his words carry weight. Yes, and that's why I say he definitely inspired it, because people believed he was as the most powerful man on the planet, or in the most powerful position in the planet, that he probably had access to information that he didn't. So people trusted him at his word. If he said there was fraud, a lot of people felt his words carried a lot of weight. And he does hold, when you know your words carry weight, you do hold moral responsibility. But I don't think there's anything immoral about holding a protest. And you're correct, they weren't even armed. No Trump supporter brandished a firearm or anything like that. Stop covering him live. What's the difference if you're covering him live or covering him pre-recorded? Fact check his statements. Well, that's what the commentators do. And don't fall into the trap of giving him free airtime. This whole email contradicts himself. First, it's don't cover him. Then don't cover him live, but do give him clips, and then back to don't cover him. What is it? Which is it?
Make it make sense.
This makes no sense. Thanks for all you do. All I can say is thanks for the laughs. Just this is a ridiculous email. And then, of course, there is the fundraising pitches where you can chip in for $5 a month. You can do this, you can do that. Okay. So that's email number 1, which gave me a first laugh. I didn't think I would get email number 2. I get almost an email a day from these people. They are like the king of spammers. Okay, here's the next one. November 17th. Do they come at the same time in the morning? No, this one came at 11:04 a.m. This one came at 8:10 a.m. Okay. Here's the next one. Now, this one, they want him to be disqualified from running. It's funny, you talk about ballot censorship. This is, I talk about ballot censorship. You talk about voter suppression. Ballot censorship is the worst kind of voter suppression. To not let people have their choice is the worst of voter suppression. Now, I certainly am not going to be voting for Trump. I am going to be voting for the Libertarian. And if for some reason we happen to nominate a terrible Libertarian, I just won't be voting for the office. I don't vote for Republicans or Democrats. I did my ballot with you guys the other day. You know that. It says we should not need to defeat Trump on the 2024 presidential ballot. Of course not. You should just keep off people you don't like, because he should not qualify to even be on the ballot. Well, he's over 35. He was born here. He's lived here at least, 14 years. Okay. It says the 14th Amendment states that anyone who has taken an oath of office and then engaged in insurrection against the government of the United States is disqualified from ever holding office again. Well, he hasn't been convicted of insurrection. He would be in jail, and he probably would potentially be facing a charge of treason. That is not insurrection. If what he did was insurrection, the BLM riots were insurrection, and we should know the names of every single person who participated in them and make sure none of them ever run for office again. But let me give you an even better example of something that is, I think almost everybody would agree, insurrection, though I don't care, because again, I've done a whole show before where, considering we were founded on treason, I don't think treason should be a crime. I've got weird opinions on that. Some people think. I think it's free speech, whatever. That's a whole other thing, but it is. So let's just deal with the law as it is. You want to know what's much more arguably insurrection? What happened in Oregon? I think it was Oregon, or was it near Seattle? It was either Seattle or Oregon, where you had Chad. Remember Chad? The autonomous zones, where they claimed that the government had no authority there, and that they set up their own little laws and things and threatened people and took over stores. That was an actual insurrection. We need the names of everyone involved in that too, and make sure those leftists never run for any kind of office. Of course, I don't believe that either. While I do think a better argument could be made for alleged insurrection against those people. The 14th Amendment, and then it goes on to say with whatever. An insurrection is exactly what the violent attacks of January 6 were. Were they violent with those selfies? Show me on the doll where the selfies hurt you. Show me on the doll where the mean words hurt you. Show me on the doll where not believing that your dementia patient was elected hurt you. Yeah, Chaz, but you know which ones I'm talking about, Sunquatch. Those were much more arguably insurrections when you actually take over a defined territory out of the country and declare like it's a sovereign nation isn't the right word, but entity. The decision to enforce the Constitution in this matter rests with the Secretaries of State in each state, and that's why we need to call on them to follow the Constitution and ensure Trump is not above the law. Wait a minute. Didn't you have a problem with Trump challenging the Secretaries of State in each state from certifying their elections because he believed, and I do believe he sincerely believed, there was fraud? I don't agree with him, but I do think the belief is sincere. And I don't believe it got its day in court. And I don't believe that the courts threw them out properly. I know a lot of leftists will say the courts laughed the lawyers out of court. No, this issue deserved its full day in court, even though I don't believe it. Everybody deserves a defense, and claims as serious as this deserve their day in court. It's things like this. This is somewhat of a rabbit trail, but not really. Some people sometimes say to me, how can you be so interested in criminal law? How would you ever want to work on a team that provided a defense for a murderer or somebody who did something else terrible? Because the state has to prove its case. I believe everybody deserves a defense. This is so important that it deserved a full hearing in court. I have a lot of problems with the way this was handled by the quote-unquote justice system. So it's okay for you guys to petition the Secretary of State to keep a choice from the voters, because the voters should also know the Constitution themselves, and they could just choose not to pick Trump in the primary. He's certainly not going to be unopposed in the primary, but you just know better, Mr. I already had a daddy. I don't need you as a daddy. Not that there's any chance in hell I'm voting for a Republican or a Democrat, but still. So Trump's not allowed to petition the Secretary of State, but you are. Got it. Okay. Demand that all Secretaries of State and state voting officials reject Trump from the ballot because his insurrection disqualifies him from Section 3 under the 14th Amendment. And if they don't, should your supporters protest outside state capitol buildings, or would that be an insurrection? Oops. Not that that's any of my business. After the Civil War, the 14th Amendment was ratified to address the white supremacy inherent in our founding documents. There was some white supremacy in the Constitution. We all know that 3/5 rule, whatever. But I think they mean it a little bit more than that. And to make governing possible after the rupture of the Civil War. That should go to tell you of what kind of seriousness was being addressed by that amendment. It was not a protest at the Capitol. You are chilling free speech. One piece of that was barring those who took up arms against the country from office. Which of the January 6 protesters took up arms? I'll wait. There isn't enough time in the world to wait, because none of them did. I do know that an unarmed woman was fatally shot, though. Should that Capitol officer be disqualified from ever serving in office and be labeled an insurrectionist? Because the violence was the violence. Don't be telling me that potentially breaking glass and pushing over barricades is violence, because a hell of a worse happened in the BLM riots. It says this disqualification clause lay mostly dormant for over a century because nothing that qualified as that has happened since then. There's been no insurrection since then. There's been no civil war since then. But you guys keep up with rhetoric like this on both sides. You are leading this country to a violent civil war, and I do not want that. You know I'm a pacifist. While I am a believer in the national divorce, I want it to be peaceful. Unfortunately, I'm just not too sure that's possible. So I still work my ass off to try to come to a peaceful political solution. And then they talk about the New Mexico judge that removed a county commissioner from office because of his participation in the insurrection. That was wrong. Just because some bozo in New Mexico did something wrong. You want to know what? For a good deal of this country, separate but equal was also the law of the land, and that was wrong. Just because a judge did something doesn't make it right. Judges do a lot of wrong things. And just trying unilaterally to keep someone off the ballot because you didn't like a protest? This legal precedent affirms, I do not think you understand what legal precedent means. You've got to be in the same jurisdiction. There's all kinds of things. If this was something that was done by the Supreme Court, since we are talking about a federal election for the president, then maybe you would have a point. But a New Mexico judge and a county commissioner, I mean, you're even talking about a different circuit. I don't think you keep using that word, but I don't think it means what you think it means. And that applies to many words in this discussion. You frickin' barking moonbats. Oh my God. Let's see here. Just as secretaries of state can bar someone from the ballot for failing to meet other qualifications, such as residency or age, or being a libertarian, whatever. They can and must do so for insurrection. Now, those of you libertarians out there who don't like Trump, there's plenty of us. I don't like, as I said, I don't like any presidents. Do you think if he got barred from the ballot for this, that it would stop there? You know that the word freedom is now becoming synonymous. Now I'm going to appeal to your self-interest, all of you types who are getting lathered up thinking I'm being an apologist for Trump, which I clearly am not. How long till people like us are labeled at least thought insurrectionists? Or, you know, if there's ever any kind of protest against the incursions, against our rights, will be said that we were involved in an insurrection. Do you not see how this is leading directly to persecution against libertarians? And you're just turning your head the other way because you don't like Trump. It's like those of you who turned your head the other way because you don't like Alex Jones and that absolutely ridiculous judgment against him. And you're like, well, I'm not going to shed any tears for him. The same thing when that Nazi guy got punched in the head. I'm not going to cry for... No. You have to stop it at its source. You don't have to like the victims. There very often aren't perfect victims. But that saying, you know, when they came for the X, I didn't say anything because I was an X and so on and so forth. But when they came for me, there was no one left to speak for me. That is true. That is true. There is a direct line from this kind of bullshit to persecution against you and me. Even if you don't care for what I said on principle, because you'll just do anything to get Orange Man bad, realize it's going to turn into Liberty Man bad. And at least do it for your own self-interest if you can't bring yourself to protest this kind of crap on principle. And I say the same thing on the other side of the equation, because the right uses its the right originated the Patriot Act and a lot of the stuff that's being used against us. Believe me, I'm not exonerating them. And I do plenty of critiques against them. But you can't turn your head at things like this. Things like this are the absolute death of freedom and will be used to suppress our movement. This is what I think of this bullshit. Thanks for the super chat, by the way, earlier, Forest Mommy, because this show definitely is not getting monetized. So I am giving a few more moments here in case there are any further comments. And I know some people are going, oh, you're awful spunky today. You must be feeling better. I actually am not. As I alluded to earlier, I get outbreaks of shingles. I think that's one of the things that's going on with me. I've got my medication that's already doing better. There's just some few health issues going on. I am doing better than I was a few days ago, obviously. But, excuse me, I'm still not feeling entirely well. So, yeah, I think that will be it for today. Give it a couple more moments. I have not yet updated my little thank you thing at the end with patrons that have dropped off. And I really don't think in this bad economy, I've got to double check, but I'm going to do my grifting again. Pink Flame of Liberty on Patreon. You would really make my evening after that terrible experience with Wells Fargo. Please, if you ever think that you might fall behind or get in this, we're in a depression. Let's just put it that way. I don't care what the economists say. Like, when you look at how little your money goes, and you think that, hey, you might get behind on your credit card. Just know, if you have one with your bank, they could just... They do have to go through certain court things. Definitely true. But still, I did not know they could do that. I thought they had to, do official garnishment or something like that. No, they can just take it. So, I will never get a credit card with the same bank that has my checking account. Keep those worlds separate. But if you enjoy this type of content, patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. And I appreciate you all. Let me fly that back up. Woo. And follow me on my social medias. And I hope you have an awesome night. I'm going tomorrow to storage to work on organizing some more historical records. There might be a show tomorrow. It all depends upon how I feel. There's an executive committee meeting with the Libertarian National Committee on Sunday, so there will not be a show on Sunday night unless you consider that meeting a show in and of itself. You can find the login information at lp.org, so maybe I'll see you there. Otherwise, good night. Bye-bye.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not